Alda was made famous by MASH, but it also almost destroyed him. The actors stopped talking to him. Production was halted for 3 days after one of them got into a physical altercation. Alda persevered through illness and suffering for 11 years in a row, appearing in nearly every scene. Since I was 8 years old, I have aspired to be the best writer I can be. I did a cartwheel on the way to the stage to accept my Emmy when they announced that I had won for writing this show. No one was aware of the awful family secret he was concealing. Fans were taken aback when he officially disclosed his condition in 2018. When I tell him that I have been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, you might be shocked to learn that I haven't disclosed this information publicly until now. In fact, the sickness had begun to manifest years earlier. Additionally, Alda is currently experiencing the most devastating time of his life. On January 28, 1936, Alda was born in Manhattan. He was Alfonso Joseph de Abruzzo in real life. Robert Alda, his father, was a singer and actor. Joan Brown, his mother, had previously been crowned Miss New York. Alan was therefore surrounded by show industry from the start. However, this was no glitzy Hollywood lifestyle. It was genuine, gritty, and loud. He grew up in a small 2-room apartment directly above a nightclub. When he tried to fall asleep, he could feel the music trembling the floor. Alan listened to music, laughter, and the hum of artists, while the majority of children heard goodnight stories. However, there was darkness behind the lights and music. Alan witnessed his mother attempt to knife his father when he was only 6 years old. Schizophrenia affected her. But at the time, no one named it that. He was afraid even if he didn't grasp the word. In the house where he lived, a smile may be dangerous, and a lull could indicate a serious problem. He was transformed by that moment. He developed his ability to read people's emotions, remain vigilant, and control pandemonium. Alan contracted polio at age 7. In 1943, there was widespread concern of the illness. It impacted his left leg. His parents decided to treat him brutally, rather than with an iron lung. Hours were spent stretching and wrapping his muscles in hot wool. He occasionally nibbled on fabric to conceal the pain as he yelled through it. Something sparked when his father used jokes to divert his attention. Alan came to see that laughter and suffering could coexist. His career was centered on that lesson, humor in sorrow. Alan traveled with his father's burlesque troupe that same year, while still recuperating. Backstage was his school. His peers were musicians, comedians, and dancers. He took in everything like a sponge, listening to every joke and observing every action. He gained knowledge in rhythm, timing, and crowd control. Alan was learning how to own a stage by the time the majority of children were studying fractions. From theater wings in little towns around the nation, he witnessed the world, its beauty and its ragged edges. Even earlier, Alan had been on stage. His father brought him on stage as a genuine baby for a comedy act, when he was 6 months old when a theater prop broke. It was his first appearance. Before turning 4, he appeared in 17 shows. Applause seemed normal to Alan. When he was 3 years old, he anticipated it after supper. "When does the audience arrive?" he once asked a friend. Performance was ingrained in him that profoundly. Alda wasn't always his name. His father came up with that name. He adopted the first part of his name, Al, and the last part, Da. Compared to d'Abruzzo, it was simpler to pronounce and looked better on theater posters. Alan retained the moniker when he began acting. Things didn't get any easier at home. His mother's condition worsened. By the time she was 11, Alan could tell by the expression in her eyes when things was going wrong. She would occasionally burn notes she had written, or whisper to herself. She once held a knife over his bed because she thought someone was poisoning her. They made 11 moves while evading fictitious spies she thought were hidden in the walls. Nobody discussed it. Nor in the family, nor at school. Alan took on the role of part-time caregiver. He resorted to comedy in order to emotionally survive. He began to perform at school lunch breaks. He recorded more than 70 jokes in a notepad, each with a label indicating the feeling it evoked. In an attempt to comprehend the workings of comedy, he meticulously reproduced radio scripts from Bob Hope and Jack Benny. Alan created humorous characters with their own voices and movements when he was 13, while his mother was in the hospital. He didn't cry when things didn't work out. He gave a performance. Alan once made the audience laugh at a school play when his mother had a breakdown. He avoided embarrassment that evening thanks to the cheers. At White Plains' Archbishop Stepinac High School, Alan also discovered stability. He worked weekends at a radio station and performed in 4 major plays annually. Despite managing everything at home, he maintained his grades, attaining a 3.8 GPA. Father Matthew Conlin, one of his teachers, thought he was unique. Alan's performance of a challenging monologue from Romeo and Juliet during a lesson was so impressive that some people believed he had received professional training. However, it was entirely self-taught. All his life he had studied timing, grief, and people. In the early 1950s, Alan Alda enrolled at Fordham University, but his time there wasn't without its challenges. His sleeplessness was so bad that it occasionally led to hallucinations. It all sprang from the suffering and anxiety he went through while receiving treatment for childhood polio. However, things changed in 1953. He took sanctuary at WFUV, the college radio station. There, he would study everything he could about broadcasting for up to 14 hours every week. It turned into his entire universe. When he got in trouble for questioning a local politician about segregation live on broadcast, everything almost fell apart. An audacious move at the time. He nearly got ejected from the station. He discovered that his voice was not powerful enough for acting at the same time, and a professor determined that he had vocal cord nodules. Alda remained persistent. He began doing vocal exercises every day, and even read aloud from Shakespeare while gargling salt water. Eleanor Stieber, an opera coach, helped him gradually change his voice. He defeated 78 students in the Jesuit oratorical contest in 1955 with a ferocious speech against civil rights. Once the president of the institution who had warned him got up and applauded. Alda departed for Europe in that same year. His junior year overseas turned into a series of catastrophes. He was robbed of his money, passport, and visa when he was in Paris. He tutored wealthy French families in order to make ends meet. All of his notes were soaked when his little flat flooded twice. In just 9 days he had to retake an entire semester's worth of work. He performed in an illegal staging of Waiting for Godot at the Roman Forum while he was in Rome. During a performance, the entire cast was arrested by the police. Alda was detained for 37 hours before being released by the U.S. Embassy. Amsterdam followed. He experienced an unexpected allergic reaction to stage makeup while he and his father were working on a television program. He experienced anaphylactic shock just 7 minutes before to the broadcast. He was unable to breathe. Nevertheless, he took the stage and performed for 42 minutes while adrenaline-fueled medics stood off to the side. He would never forget that awful moment. Later in his career, he advocated for more robust health safeguards for performers, a cause he was passionate about. He enlisted in the Army in 1957. Contrary to popular belief, he had a fascinating stint. He was employed by Project Stargate, a covert psychological operations team according to documents disclosed in 2012. For training missions, he created fictitious identities using his theater abilities. He was even able to crack codes at the second fastest rate of 100 to 27 words per minute in his 346-person group. During a training one evening, live rounds were inadvertently loaded. He was little over 8 inches away from 2 shots. The Army retained his name on a recall list until 1971, just in case of a national emergency, but he was unaware of this until decades later. His background influenced the cynical, anti-authority doctor he would portray on MASH. An unforeseen circumstance occurred a year before to his Army duty. At a dinner gathering in Manhattan in 1956, Alda got to know Arlene Weiss. Everyone has a story about falling in love and eating cake off the floor, but there's more to it than that. It wasn't just any supper. Leonard Bernstein organized it. He believed the two were on equal intellectual footing. The gathering took place at Vladimir Ashkenazy's flat, the pianist from Russia. The evening got off to a rough start. Alda disparaged Arlene's study. She referred to his aspirations for acting as egotistical. It was tense. Then Arlene knocked over a rum cake during a discussion about Jean-Paul Sartre. Both of them stooped, chuckled, and began consuming it from the ground. That was the pivotal moment. She laughed for 27 seconds. It stayed with him forever. Even their March 15, 1957 wedding was on the verge of dissolution. 2 days prior, Alan had undergone emergency surgery for an infected wisdom tooth. In every picture, his face was enlarged. The night before, the chapel they reserved flooded. They were married in the residence of composer Richard Rodgers. Their rings vanished 90 minutes prior to the ceremony. They had been pocketed by Alan's cousin, who was 4 years old. It took them 25 years to realize that their marriage license contained a typo, Whites instead of Weiss. All of this was irrelevant. Despite doctors warning Arlene against getting pregnant because of her heart condition, they remained together for 66 years and reared 3 daughters. Alda declined a significant Broadway part in 1962 because it would have required him to be away from Arlene during her second pregnancy. Everything was shaped by that choice. Family was always the top priority. Alda's career as an actor progressed slowly. Critics continued to compare him to his well-known father Robert Alda even after he made his Broadway debut in 1959 and Only in America. He was even referred to as Robert Alda's boy. He has his father's appearance but not his presence, according to one director. He was tormented by the remark. He declined 3 parts between 1960 and 1962 because they resembled roles his father had performed. He even contemplated leaving acting to pursue a career in advertising at one time. However, things started to shift in 1966. When Alda played the lead in the musical The Apple Tree, he had to portray 3 distinct roles. Despite having bronchitis the entire time, he continued to practice every morning, frequently following his throat hydrotherapy procedures. On opening night he performed despite having a fever. He was nominated for a Tony. In one of Broadway's earliest interracial romantic partnerships, he and Diana Sands co-starred in The Owl and the Pussycat the following year. A total of 47 hate letters were sent by theatergoers. However, Alda's 6-minute monologue features 17 emotional changes. Acting schools would eventually study that scenario. Alda trained like an NFL player and starred in his first major motion picture, Paper Lion, in 1968. While filming, he suffered a concussion and shattered 3 ribs. In front of a stadium audience, he was once knocked unconscious for 4 minutes, but he continued to act after he regained consciousness. Then followed the eerie body possession movie The Mephisto Waltz in 1971. After 4 months of 6 hours a day of piano practice, Alda discovered that they would utilize a hand duplicate for close-ups. Stranger things also occurred on that set. Cameras kept breaking, lights flickered, and the studio became oddly cold. For almost 20 years, Alda kept that shot out of the public eye. But the denials continued. He was rejected for 32 TV roles between 1962 and 1971. He even advanced to the last round for Uncle's Guy before being eliminated. He wasn't scary enough, according to the network. He had to borrow money to cover his rent because he was broke. We'll Get By, a pilot he filmed in 1967, received positive reviews from test viewers but was shelved. He was prohibited from working for 18 months per the contract. In 1972, he shared a room with 4 other actors and lived off peanut butter while performing dinner theater in Pennsylvania for $175 a week. He set a timetable for himself. He would resign and become a teacher if nothing changed by September. No, they all enjoy different things. There's an exhilaration about acting. Things are going nicely for the one doing it. You're suspended in mid-air. Yes. Thus it's a truly amazing sensation. MASH followed. Alda nearly didn't make the audition. He had to travel to Los Angeles that same evening while filming The Glass House in Utah. A plane was chartered by his agent, but the pilot became ill. In Nevada, they had to land early. Alda rented a car, drove 270 miles at great speed, and pledged his grandfather's pocket watch as security. To 9:17 p.m. he arrived to the studio. The casting director was ready to go, still wearing makeup. Alda arrived ill-prepared, and delivered a frank performance that won him the part. Alda didn't immediately say yes, though. In order to see his family in New Jersey, he insisted on taking time off every 4th weekend. The studio declined. He remained steadfast. At last they consented, but only provided he covered the cost of the trips himself. In the end, it cost him $187,000 during the performance. It was decades before he made any public mention of it. Alan Alda lived Hawkeye Pierce, not just portrayed him on screen. Alda was in nearly every scene that MASH ever filmed for 11 years in a row. He barely missed a few of the 256 episodes. He persevered in the face of illness, exhaustion, and burnout. He taped an entire episode in 1978, despite suffering from a 103-degree temperature and stomach illness. Throughout, a medical professional was off camera, prepared to step in. Things became considerably more intense in 1979. He took action Monday through Wednesday. He gave the order on Thursdays. Fridays, he wrote. He committed up to 30 pages of lines to memory each day. He passed out from weariness on the set the same year. For long shots, the production hired a body duplicate without telling him. Alda insisted that they reshoot everything after learning about it. And they did. Alda wasn't merely acting, though. He accepted it because he wanted greater control. He became the show's main creative force after penning its first episode in 1975. Alda took over as head writer after Larry Gelbart left. By season 6, he had covertly changed more than half of the dialogue in episodes he didn't even write, according to studio records. He gained notoriety for performing take after take. He had power after 47 attempts at one scene with radar. It was like having the entire audience in the wings when you had all these folks off to the side while you were acting out a scene for the camera. Beginning with season 5, Alda was able to terminate any script that he believed did not align with the show's message due to a stipulation in his contract. As a result, 14 complete episodes were never broadcast. Even while CBS publicly pretended that Alda was merely a cast member, by season 9, they had to consult him directly for any creative decisions. 31 episodes were written or co-written by him. He was the director of 32. In addition to leading the cast each week, that's over a quarter of the entire show. Then came the prizes. For the same show, he received Emmys for acting, writing, and directing in the same year. It had never happened before, and it was 1979. To get an episode addressing sexism on the air, he even jeopardized his career. Alda threatened to resign, but CBS refused to air it. They gave in. After a vicious episode in which he refused to utilize a stunt double and ended up with actual burns on his arms, he eventually earned his final acting Emmy for MASH in 1982. However, things weren't always easy behind the scenes. Trapper John, played by Wayne Rogers, left after season 3. One of the main reasons, according to his contract which was revealed in 2019, was that Alda received 80% of their shared sequences. When Harry Morgan discovered that Alda had rewritten one of his poignant scenes in season 6, they got into a physical altercation. For 3 days the set was closed. After Alda led Loretta Swede in a contentious shower scene, she almost departed. Even the on-set lunches were eventually divided. One table was occupied by those who backed Alda, while another was occupied by the others. The last episode was also written by Alda. He was the director, and until a few days before filming, he kept the script a secret. The cast's cries would then be genuine. Although it worked, he wasn't forgiven by everyone. For 6 months, David Ogden Stiers didn't communicate with Alda because he was so distraught. The helicopter's well-known farewell message? Alda came up with the third suggestion. CBS rejected the first two because they were too political. In some way, he was also writing movies at the same time. The first was Joe Tynan's Seduction. He occasionally scribbled notes at 3 in the morning while writing it in the middle of MASH. It earned him close to $20 million and earned him a nomination to the Writers Guild. He argued with the director during filming, changed about half of the script, and persuaded Meryl Streep to accept the part after she had repeatedly declined. The 4 seasons, his first film as a filmmaker, followed. Studios didn't think it was possible. They had intended a modest release, but it ended up being a huge success, earning nearly $50 million. Alda insisted on capturing actual seasonal changes over a 13-month period, which increased the budget by almost $1 million. Alda refused to take Carol Burnett's place after she contracted illness, so she rewrote 31 scenes. He concealed his gallbladder attacks while filming the majority of the film. The thrill for me, though, is how fantastic the film is. You know, you go to the movies, you're in them, or you hear about them, and most of the time they're good. He stunned Hollywood once more in 1992. In the movie Whispers in the Dark, he portrayed a cruel psychotherapist. It contrasted with his MASH image. He interviewed 2 convicted murderers and observed actual therapy sessions in order to get ready. He modified his voice to sound calm but eerie, worked with a zoologist, and lost 27 pounds. The job was so severe that it caused him to have nightmares and ruined his marriage. However, it was successful. The audiences were agitated, and he was commended by reviewers for shedding his image. Although Alan Alda had been well known for many years, things became quiet in the early 2000s. After MASH, the fame started to wane. Then something changed in 2004. He joined The West Wing, a political drama that was already well known for its compelling characters and incisive writing. Alda portrayed California Republican Senator Arnold Vinnick. For him, the role represented a significant change. He had a liberal leaning in real life. However, Vinnick was a conservative who disapproved of religious organizations' political power and corporate favoritism. He was not a one-time or two-time visitor. Alda appeared in 28 episodes. He had his first in episode 8 of season 6. Additionally, his name was shown in the opening credits of episode 13. It expressed a lot on its own. He was more than a visitor. Once more, he was a key figure. His character was elected Secretary of State at the end of the series, which was a poignant and dignified ending. It served as a reminder to the industry of Alan Alda's continued significance. The Emmys followed. Alda received his 6th Emmy in 2006, when he was 70 years old, for Outstanding Supporting Actor in a Drama Series. 24 years had passed since his last Emmy victory in 1982. He defeated well-known opponents Michael Imperioli, William Shatner, Oliver Platt, and Gregory Itzin. Decades after his comedic career, that moment demonstrated to the globe that Alda remained a powerful figure in television. Another significant event occurred in the same year. Alda was nominated for his first Academy Award. He was 68. He portrayed Senator Ralph Owen Brewster, a dubious politician who was trying to overthrow Howard Hughes, in the movie The Aviator. It was a darker part than any of Alda's previous roles. Leonardo DiCaprio initially doubted Alda's ability to get it off. He believed he was too kind. However, even DiCaprio acknowledged his mistake after viewing Alda's effort. The nomination did not result in victory. Although Morgan Freeman won the Oscar, it restored Alda's reputation in Hollywood. He was more than simply the MASH guy. The subsequent events demonstrated that it was not a one-time resurgence. Alda continued to receive good roles. He portrayed Jack Donaghy's father, Milton Green, in 30 Rock. It was heartwarming and humorous, and it won him another Emmy. He was in The Big C from 2011 to 2013. Then, at the age of 79, he received another Emmy nomination for his role as a criminal mastermind on the Blacklist. He never slowed down, not even in his 80s. Alda made appearances in Ray Donovan from 2018 to 2020. He portrayed a man embroiled in the murky mysteries of Hollywood. He was still employed at the age of 86. He even came back to Get Ray Donovan, the 2022 film. Even after receiving a Parkinson's diagnosis in 2015, he continued to act and didn't conceal the condition. In Marriage Story and subsequent performances, his tremors were evident. But Alda didn't mind. He thought that by displaying it, the illness became more commonplace. He took a significant risk in 2016. He joined Louis C.K.'s bizarre Raw web series Horace and Pete. Only episodes were silently posted online. There were no press releases or advertisements. Alda portrayed a resentful elderly bartender named Uncle Pete. Critics praised it despite the fact that it was one of his darkest roles. His best effort in years, they said. Even when Louis C.K. was the subject of criticism, Alda's response was straightforward. "I like him as an artist, but he did something awful," he said. Like the show itself, it was complex. But Alda never shied away from hard realities. Throughout all of this, Alda continued to write. Ghostwriters were not employed by him. He wrote by hand. Never Have Your Dog Stuffed, his debut memoir, was published in 2005 and topped the bestseller list for 27 weeks. He disclosed distressing details of his childhood in it, such as the incident when he was 7 years old and his mother, who suffers from paranoid schizophrenia, attacked him with a knife. Following a health emergency in Chile, he wrote his second book, Things I Overheard While Talking to Myself. If I understood you, would I have this look on my face? His third book was on communication, a topic he had been studying for years. When Scientific American Frontiers is being hosted, Alda wrote from 3 a.m. every morning from 2005 to 2017, until 5 in the morning. He spent more than 4,000 mornings doing this. He starred in 3 popular TV series and 12 movies at that time. His works have been translated into 23 languages and have sold over 2.7 million copies. Over 15,000 scientists have received training from the Alan Alda Center for Communicating Science, which he gave every cent of his $8.4 million donation to. The morning of July 31, 2018 then arrived. Alda, who is 82, announced his Parkinson's disease to the world this morning on CBS. This, however, was no moment of sympathy. He was not looking for pity. Actually, something odd before his diagnosis. He had read an article on how the sickness may be indicated by acting out dreams as you sleep. He had a dream one night that someone was throwing what he believed to be a bag of potatoes at him and attacking him. In fact, he hurled a pillow at his spouse. He was tested as a result of the dream. Due to deteriorating symptoms, he refrained from becoming public. During interviews, many had only observed his thumb twitching. He took charge instead of letting the tabloids fabricate their own tales. He spoke candidly and shamelessly. He had a conversation with Michael J. Fox for his Clear Plus Vivid podcast later that year. At 29, Fox received a diagnosis. They had an open and optimistic talk. According to Fox, the secret was not to forecast the future of the illness. Be present in the moment. Alda concurred. Later, in order to assist researchers, he joined Fox Insight, an online Parkinson's study. It was their thinking, not their condition, that brought the two performers together. And Alda's life was influenced by that way of thinking. He didn't accept sympathy. Parkinson's was an enigma to him. According to research, he worked out by boxing, playing tennis, and even marching to John Philip Sousa songs. Don't follow quackery, he said. See what the real science is up to. He was still acting, talking, and moving at the age of 86. His message was straightforward. He had no intention of slowing down, and the world hasn't ended yet.